What's something Francis Ngannou and Deontay Wilder have in common? They both hit like a train. Believe it or not, UFC commentator Joe Rogan actually thinks the Cameroonian giant could have been extremely successful had he gone into boxing. Former boxing champion Tony Bellew, on the other hand, thinks Ngannou should avoid a boxing run and just stick to MMA. Keep watching this video for the latest updates in Ngannou's boxing aspirations. First up, the hardest hitter on earth. Did you know Francis has put 10 of his last 14 opponents to sleep in his epic championship run for the heavyweight title? Yep, he shook up the division after giving a whole new meaning to the words hardest hitter. And it's not even like fans started calling him that after witnessing him launch his opponents into space. It's been scientifically proven by a punching machine. Ngannou literally holds the record for being the hardest hitter on earth right now. Let's put that into perspective. His punches are equivalent to 96 horsepower. That's like getting hit by a Ford Escort going at full speed. It kind of makes sense now why his opponents always used to be super nervous before fighting him, but his days of dominance are over now. He's parted ways with the promotion and now looks ahead for different opportunities, preferably in the world of boxing. UFC commentator Joe Rogan thinks the Predator would have actually been a super successful boxer, reaching the same status as the bronze bomber Deontay Wilder. Just think about that for a second. Instead of the kicks, wrestling, and all that, Ngannou just spent years training his head movement and punches. That's it. A machine built for boxing, and if you combine all that with his punching credentials, you'd probably have yourself the most dangerous boxer of all time. Like Francis just went right into boxing, no MMA ever. Doesn't have to learn how to kick, just has to learn head movement, learn how to put punches on people. 270 natural, insane power. We think it just makes him more dangerous. The ability to punch and kick. Next, the heavyweight knockout artist. If you're a hardcore MMA fan who doesn't really follow boxing, then you're probably wondering, what does Deontay Wilder's level of success look like? Well, it has something to do with being one of the greatest heavyweight knockout artists of this generation. He's called the Bronze Bomber for a reason, you know. And if we're talking about the world of boxing in particular, he's easily the hardest hitter on the roster. But how does that stack up against Ngannou? We've already told you he's the hardest hitter on earth. Not in boxing or in the heavyweight division, but on earth. There's no one who hits harder than him, and that's mainly why Joe Rogan thinks he could have gone on to achieve the same success as Deontay. Because believe it or not, there was actually a time when the Bronze Bomber was the most feared boxer in the division, with a jaw-dropping record of 39 wins at 0 losses. But then again, it's exactly what Joe said. Imagine a Francis Ngannou who never stepped into the world of MMA, who trained for boxing from day one. Imagine the impact he could have made on the sport. But regardless of all that, we think he'll still go down as one of the most dominant UFC heavyweights of all time. And there's even an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience when the Cameroonian giant detailed his struggles and how he had to work in a sand mine to make ends meet. He's a prime example of someone who's made it in life and will never forget his MMA legacy. Moving on, the Big Four. Boxing has always been something special for Ngannou. It was actually after watching Mike Tyson that the 36-year-old started taking his career seriously. He was always an absolute titan, and when you think about how he's had to pull himself out of absolute hell, it makes sense why Joe thinks he'd dominate boxing. Did you know working in the sand mine wasn't the only thing he used to do? He did all sorts of odd jobs as a child to make ends meet. Underage labor working in a sand mine, growing up poor with nothing, to having everything in the world. Now that's what we call a superhero. And now that he's officially a free agent, the Predator is already starting to get offers to compete in different promotions and exhibition matches for an insane amount of money. But since he's envisioned himself as the heavyweight boxing champion, Ngannou wants to compete against the Big Four: Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, Anthony Joshua, and Deontay Wilder. He wants to become a serious contender for the heavyweight title, and while we certainly think he could knock any of these men out, fighting them in the boxing ring kinda sounds suicidal. And don't get us wrong, if the Big Four were to step inside the octagon, Francis would completely school them, but since he doesn't have any real professional boxing experience, stepping into their world as a serious contender will be very difficult to pull off. We think he should stick to exhibition fights at this point, because he's not going to get any younger now. Better safe than sorry, right? Now for staying in his own discipline. Former Cruiserweight World Champion Tony Bellew thinks Ngannou trying to cross over into the world of boxing will be the biggest mistake of his life. And instead of trying to get a high-profile boxing fight, he should stick to his own discipline and entertain MMA offers. But we all know him. He's definitely not the one to listen to guys like Tony and actually back off from what he wants most. Did you know there was actually a time when Francis used to say all sorts of things, like how he knows the fight against Tyson will happen no matter what? Whether it's in a phone booth or on the roof, the fight will happen. He obviously won't be competing in MMA because he would get killed, but the fight will happen. Maybe Tony sort of misunderstood what he meant here. The former heavyweight champion wasn't talking about starting a professional career in boxing or something. Maybe he just wants to have some fun, make some boxing-level money, and retire in peace. Or maybe he wants to test himself as he reaches the end of his career. Both scenarios are okay. There's nothing wrong with wanting to cash out or test yourself in an exhibition boxing match. Keyword exhibition. Because if he thinks about making a legitimate entry in the world of boxing as an actual contender for the heavyweight title, sorry to say, but he'd get butchered. Following up, his boxing debut will happen no matter what. We're going to tell you something that'll blow your mind. The Predator didn't leave his country to go learn MMA. He actually left to make a name in boxing. And while his success in MMA will always go down in the history books, boxing is something he's always been serious about. Even his manager, Markel Martin, told Sky Sports on one occasion that Ngannou is very serious about boxing, as it's always been his first dream. And whether he chooses to make a debut in a high-profile matchup or against someone lower in the rankings, it'll eventually happen no matter what. Who knows? He might even get to meet his idol Mike Tyson in the ring, even though it sounds highly unlikely given their age difference. But yeah, even Tyson Fury has expressed interest in fighting him inside the boxing ring to give the fans what they want. Because if Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather can fight, then so can Ngannou. The only difference being the Notorious had the support of UFC President Dana White, while Ngannou will have to go through it on his own. And we'll get to the whole episode about being stripped of the heavyweight title in a bit, but we'd like to tell you more about what Tony said. He thinks it'll be a terrible shame if Ngannou ditches MMA offers to fight anyone from the Big Four, because he'll only get mauled. Organizations like Bellator and PFL are an intense battle to sign the former champion, and leaving those opportunities for boxing is something Tony thinks would hurt his legacy. Up next, why was he stripped of the title? The news was pretty shocking, to be honest. We've been hearing things like how he's going to be welcoming Johnny Bones after a 3-year absence, and then out of nowhere, we're told he's been dropped by the UFC. We always knew he was in a contractual dispute and wanted more money, but we never thought Uncle Dana would let his greatest heavyweight walk away so easily. The boss claims he offered him the biggest contract ever that would have made him the highest paid heavyweight in the history of the promotion. But whether that's true is still kind of doubtful, because we think Ngannou is smarter than that. The last thing he'd do is walk away from the beefiest contract ever. Watching the Cameroon Giant take on John Jones would have also been super entertaining, but with Ngannou no longer a part of the promotion, that job has fallen on the shoulders of Frenchman Cyril Gane. Uncle Dana even took some low blows by saying Francis doesn't want to risk it against Jones now, because he knows he can make money fighting weaker opponents. Well, duh. He's 36 now, and we're pretty sure he wouldn't want to take on one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. Wouldn't he rather cash in on his stardom and retire in the Bahamas or something? Last but not least, offers on the table. As we said before, the former heavyweight champion has a lot of offers already lined up from different organizations all over the world. Apart from that one promoter offering him $3 million to fight someone on Instagram, Ngannou has offers from Bellator and the PFL. We're not too sure whether he'd sign with Bellator, but he's bound to make some serious money if he decides to go to PFL. But if there's one thing for sure, he'll probably try his level best at pushing for a boxing match before resorting to these options. That's it from our side, folks. So what do you think? Will Francis Ngannou make his boxing debut in a high-profile matchup? Let us know in the comments below. Remember, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.